report. We really appreciate everybody's time, everybody online and everybody here. And, this is your meeting. This is your time. We're going to throw a lot of information at you, and we want you to ask questions when they're done talking and they say, do you have any questions? Please don't interrupt them in their speech or their talk. So we'll open with a word of prayer. We really appreciate everybody being here. Thank you, Ruth, for running down the aisle. You're amazing. So I singled you out too. I'm sorry, Ruth. That's two people now. Anyways, if we could pray, please. Dear Lord, thank you so much for today and for this annual report, Lord. This is an amazing church, an amazing congregation, amazing pastors, Lord. Just be with these leaders as they get up here and talk about the exciting things we got going on for 2022. We love you, Lord Jesus. Open our hearts, open our ears. Let these people talk, Lord. We love you. Pray this in your name. Amen. I don't know if I'm supposed to introduce the next guy up, but I'm going to anyways because that's how I roll. Let's give it up to Sam Fletcher. Thank you.
Good morning. Okay, so I don't know if we have a slide coming up or... Perfect. Okay, so my name's Sam Fletcher. I'm in charge of the maintenance at Berean here with a bunch of other guys too. And just wanted to give you a quick report on some things we accomplished in 2021 and then some upcoming things that we have for 2022. So we did some upgrade to the sanctuary on the Wi-Fi. We did that here, and then we did some more in the gym building here just recently. Replaced the heaters in the gym building, so you're nice and warm over there. We installed 3 more big TVs, smart TVs in the classroom so you could get your lessons on there remotely, or wirelessly, excuse me. And then, again, just keep maintaining those upward fields. In 2022, we're going to install some more security cameras around just to kind of keep some future NASCAR fans from tearing up the football fields. And some rocks. We're trying to secure that. We've done a lot of different things, and I know it's kind of disheartening sometimes come to church and you see tire marks all over the football fields, but it's pretty tempting out there to do that evidently. So we have some Eagle Scout projects and they could do some chain link around there. We're going to look at putting some big boulders out there so we can keep those folks from tearing that up. So that's really all I have. I just thought I'd open it up for some questions. If you have any questions, I did appreciate Carla's pod survey she did. Last month, we did get 4 or 5 folks that put down their name to help out with some painting and some landscaping around the grounds. So anybody that feels like they want to come out here and pitch in and do some work on anything, let me know and we'll put you to work. So questions? Jeff. I think you guys do a great job. Thank you. Appreciate it. A lot of behind the scenes stuff that we do, so. Cool. All righty, well, I guess I will turn it over to, I don't have the agenda up here. Who's, Janelle, come on up. Thank you.
Well, I'm going to report on the missions committee work this year. But before I get into what we accomplished over the year, there's one thing I want to correct on the budget on page 7 in your report. We still do support Nathan and Jessica Killian, but they are no longer with Things to Come Mission. They are serving with the Navigators, working with international students in Western Washington. So that they are no longer with Things to Come Mission, as it says on your annual report. The Missions Awareness Committee has been able to work with supporting multiple missionaries and missionary agencies throughout the year. That we, as a church, support 43 missionaries on 4 different continents. There are 9 agencies that we support as well, both local and international. In 2021, the Faith Promise commitment was $78,746. At the beginning of 2021, we were able to bring a carryover from the previous year of 2020 of $86,058. And if you remember last year, the board did approve a $60,000 transfer from the general fund to support missions. So we had a total of $224,799 available for 2021. The MAC did set a budget for 2021 of $207,000. That was a moderate reduction from the prior year. But the actual giving from 2021 was, if you remember, the faith promise was $78,000-ish. $105,000 actually was donated throughout the year. Monthly disbursements in 2021 totaled $200,280. Those monthly disbursements go directly to the missionaries and the agencies for their support needs. That is totally separate from any projects that we might undertake. In 2021, 2 of our supported missionary families left the field. Matt and April Sykes resigned as GMI missionaries, and they returned to the United States from Nicaragua. And Joel and Leah Sanders took a long-term leave of absence from TCM when border closures due to the pandemic would not allow them to go into their chosen field. As funds did become available, and as they do become available in any given year, we are often able to contribute towards one-time project needs. In 2021, we were able to contribute to a few worthy projects. Berean was able to contribute towards a project that John and Naomi Caprari have been working on, and they talked about that when they were here for our missions conference in October, where they support an African family to go to an unreached people group, and they provide setup costs and things for them to establish some sort of an economic endeavor where they can continue to support that ministry on a long-term basis. So we were able to provide funds for training one of those families. We also were able to provide funds for 2 crew missionaries to help with startup costs in establishing new ministries or somewhat new ministries. I don't know if you remember Megan Snodgrass, who used to go here, but her and her husband Trevor James went to Slovakia this fall, and they began a ministry there with crew, and so we were able to provide some funds for startup costs for them. And we also provided startup costs for Emily Bell, who is one of our supported missionaries that works with crew, because she had to transition to a new field also due to border closures. So she went to Thailand, and that involved more startup costs for her. Berean was also able to provide project funds for helping to purchase a transport vehicle that the Mongos are using in their ministry in Africa. Faith promise commitments for 2022 amounted to $87,510. In addition, there was a carryover of $27,457 from 2021, and there are endowment proceeds available in excess of $75,000. With a total of $190,653 available, the Missions Awareness Committee has set a proposed budget for 2022 of $190,120 to continue funding our currently supported missionaries and agencies this year. That does reflect a very moderate reduction just to make sure that we could keep our budget balanced. I do want to thank the members of this committee who have helped throughout 2021. That includes my husband Patrick, John and Nancy Comstock, Roger and Kathy Coombs, and Pat and Shireen Young, and of course Pastor Paul Mcdonald. Any questions? Yes, sir.
That reduction, is that an across-the-board reduction? Or what?
We didn't do an across-the-board reduction because of the different levels of support that some of our missionaries get. We looked and we looked at individual missionary families and say, how much do we support them now, and how much, what is their family situation like, what is the cost of living where they live, that kind of thing. So we tried, we might have taken a little bit more from this one than this one. We did discontinue support of KMBI. For various reasons, but one of the reasons is because we weren't convinced that it was an effective use of the money that we were giving, and that it seems to be more of a not local entity anymore. It's more of a nationwide focus of the ministry, that kind of thing. Does that answer your question? Okay, any others? Yes, sir. Yes. that left the field last year, yeah. Yeah. Roger said, he reminded me, Frosty and Kathy Hansen, who have been in Bolivia, and we've supported them for quite some time. They have returned home from the States, from Bolivia to the States. They have retired. We are supporting them through April at the request of GMI, because that's what they typically do when a missionary leaves the field or retires. They asked us to support them for 3 months beyond. So they did come home about 2 weeks ago, and Frosty conveniently caught COVID after he got home, which wasn't good, I guess. But he is recovering, my understanding is, and but they are asking us to support them through April. So once that, and in your budget, that you will see figures that only support them through April. So, any other questions? Yes. Mm-hmm. So the last I heard, Kennedy's wife, Sophia, is still continuing the ministry, so they are still, at least Sophia Simtoya is still being supported by our monthly donation to them for her needs. But I don't have any other information beyond that at this point. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
I'm looking at my watch because I know that some of you are. This is a part of the report that I know some of you just roll your eyes. You look at the pages and all those numbers are just so spooky. Oh, yes. And I told my lovely wife, Laura, she's going to have to tell me afterwards if I'm trying to make this too simple. But I think sometimes we overlook the financial report as if it's just something you have to do. But you know, finances that's part of our worship. And so I think it's important for us to understand what is going on. And so I'm going to direct your attention to the report. And I'll start by saying that I made a list there of some of the folks who are part of the team, the financial team, and you really need to thank those folks for their time. And I left two people off that I need to mention, and those two people are John Sporleader and Glenn Wagaman. Our checks, as they go out for security reasons, require 2 signatures, and so 2, 3, sometimes 4 times a month, John and Glenn get pestered to be available, and they're both working, and they're both check signers, authorized check signers on our bank account. So they also are part of the financial team. I'd like to direct your attention to page 3, and we'll start there. Page 3 is titled The Statement of Financial Condition. And as the report says, that is a tally of our financial situation, our financial status as of midnight, December 31st, 2021. So that's how we ended the year. And fundamentally, this sheet shows what we own and what we owe. And you'll note that the top section there, titled Cash Accounts, those are all the liquid assets. That's what we have in cash. And then in the middle, you see fixed assets, all of our furniture and so forth. And then there are some totals down there. Going back to that top section there, the cash accounts, you might notice that 2 of those accounts are in the red. I don't want you to be alarmed. One of them is the camp fund, and the reason for that is that when we budget for camp and plan for camp, we tell the camp, here's how many campers we have coming, and here's how many counselors we have coming. And with COVID, what happened? We had some cancellations. And so that $193 is just what we had to pay to cover the cancellations from the camp. And then you also notice a negative in the youth missions trip fund. And while that looks like something that should be maybe distressing, that's really a praise. Because we had something in the neighborhood of $18,000 at risk, because if you remember, we had this trip planned for our youth and the sponsors that went with them, and COVID hit. Now all of a sudden we've got tickets, airline tickets that we can't use. And bless Patty Probilski, she stayed on this, and some of the tickets that were refunded to us actually were not refundable tickets. But she stayed and hounded those airlines. And so what this is, the $7,468, is the residue that we could not get refunded. And so it really, even though it looks bad, that's really a blessing compared to how bad things could have been. And I want you to know that in the February board meeting, This shows you honestly that those two funds are lacking, but in the February board meeting, we'll be asking the board, and I'm sure the board will agree, we will take from the general fund and supplement those funds and zero them out. Does that make sense? So the camp fund is at zero, and that the youth missions trip then is at zero. The total for that is something I definitely want to point out. Look at total cash accounts, $213,000. I'm going to be rounding these numbers but you can see there. Total cash accounts, $213,000. I don't know if you're keeping up with what's going on with churches, not only across our country, but around the world. But I can tell you, we are blessed. We have $213,000 in the bank. That's cash. And part of the reason I want to emphasize this is that I have heard, nobody has talked to me, but I have heard that some of you are alarmed and concerned about what our financial condition is. And there's always this struggle with the balance. We don't want to harangue and hound for money every time we're a nickel short. On the other hand, we have to be honest and tell you what our finances are so you know, and typically our experience has been that when we let God's people know what the needs are and where we are, that God's people respond, and that's the way it should be. So there's that balance, and apparently we've reported things in some ways or said some things or indicated some things that some of you are worried, and so I want you to first of all, on page 3 here, take encouragement from the fact that we are in a strong position. We have $213,000 in the bank as of the end of the year. So there's no reason to worry about our financial status. That doesn't say anything about our trend. It doesn't say anything about where we're going, and so we need to look further. And now I would refer you to pages 4 and 5. Pages 4 and 5 are the same report. It just takes 2 pages to get it. So it's all the same report, and you will see it's titled The Statement of Activity. So whereas page 3 was the statement of financial condition, this is the financial activity. This is, and you want to look at the far right column for 2021, this is setting out for us what did we receive in 2021 and what did we spend in 2021 so that we ended up with what we had on page 3. Does that make sense? So this is in a business, this would be called the profit and loss or the expense report. And in the right-hand column, you will see on the top part of page 4, you will see what we received. And we use the term revenue, so that's what we received. And you'll notice in the middle there, we received $570,000. If your eyes stray a little bit and you look to the left, you'll notice that last year we received $874,000. Now there's where some people start to get alarmed. Uh-oh, the church is failing. No, it isn't. Is that something we should notice? It is something we should notice, but it's not a cause for great alarm, and we'll go on and explain more here. At the bottom of page 4, and then on to page 5, we have a listing of what we spent. Where did the money go? We've looked at the money that came in. Now, what about the money that went out? And if you look over on page 5, about 2/3 of the way down, you'll see total fund expenditures, $933,000. Now, you don't have to be a mathematician to start wondering, wait a minute, we spent more than we took in. That can't be. That doesn't make any, that's not good financial management. Well, there's some reasons for that, and I want to point them out to you. First of all, look up. If I look up, I'll get blinded. All these lights, that was an expensive project, $114,000. Now you say, why in the world did you do that? We did it because we had already signed a contract. We had signed a contract before COVID hit. And what our feeling was the Lord knew that COVID was going to come, and we had that contract, and we felt like we had to honor that contract. So aside from any legal obligation, we felt it was our moral obligation to honor that contract. We also had a situation where the gym heaters failed. And I don't know why, because they were only 25 or 30 years old. But they had to be replaced. And so that was $17,000. Then we discovered the vans, when it was time to take our kiddos to camp, the vans were not safe to travel. So almost $5,000 went into van expenses that normally we would not have had. And then Giving dropped. So the difference between what we received and the difference between what we spent, while it looks extreme, is accounted for by those things. Also, that $933,000 includes what we dispersed to support our missionaries. And so, again, that is a cause for more concern, certainly something we should notice, but I don't think that we need to be alarmed. You'll notice that in 2021, if you're looking there on page 5, just below the 933, you'll see we have a negative 363. And what that basically is saying, if we were a business, we lost money in 2021. Given everything that has happened, that's not surprising. Is it a trend we want to continue? Well, obviously not, and so we need to be thinking about what are we going to do about that. But I don't want you to leave this meeting and have any panic in your heart. And we'll go further here and talk about what it is that we can do. If you also notice at the bottom, net revenue, 325,000 negative. That's where a company would put their profit or their loss, and that shows that we had a loss last year of $325,000. If you keep your finger there, just take a peek back at page 3. Down at the bottom, change in fellowship value, negative 325,000. That's where that figure comes from. All right? So from the activity page, we ended up with a negative $325,000, and that ends up as a decrease then on page 3 on our financial status. So I hope that makes sense to you. Now this now seems like it might be a little bit more alarming, so what are we going to do? And I'm going to give an illustration that I hope is not too juvenile and too simple for you, but I want you to just think about an imaginary John Doe family. The John Doe family is planning their budget for 2022. And they sit down and they think about what their needs are, and they reckon that what they need is $60,000. I'm just picking a number out of the air here. $5,000 a month is what they need. However, John Doe has had a hard time at work, and his salary's been reduced, and so he's only going to get $4,000 a month. So they have needs of $5,000 a month, but he's only going to receive an income of $4,000 a month. So he asked, what can they do? Well, there's some things they can do. They can cut their expenses. That's one thing they can do. Another thing they could do is try and increase their income. Maybe somebody can get a little extra work somewhere. The other thing they could do is they could withdraw from their rainy day fund. They have a rainy day fund of $36,000. And so if they spent $5,000 every month like they think they're going to need to, and they only get $4,000 a month coming in, they have a deficit of $1,000 a month. If they take $1,000 a month out of their rainy day fund, it'll deplete from $36,000, and at the end of the year, they'll still have $24,000 left in their rainy day fund. They can make it. You see the analogy? We have a rainy day fund. We don't want to hoard those monies. We don't want to see it disappear, but we have a rainy day fund of $213,000. And absolutely, praise the Lord. And so what I want to encourage you with is this. We do have a trend that we have to be careful of. We will be looking to see if we can reduce our expenses, as you'll see when we look at our proposed budget for 2022. And we may have an increased income. Is that something we can control? We can't control that. The Lord can control that, though. And I think some of us, even based on Pastor Mitch's message out of James a couple of weeks ago when the word was messing with us, some of us may decide, you know, the questions that we were asked at the end of that message were kind of probing. Are we giving out of our surplus? Are we giving what is convenient? Are we giving after we have figured out this is what I think I want, now here's the leftover? Is that what we're doing? Or are we giving in a way that's sacrificial? So giving during the year could pick up. But let me just tell you this. If giving does not pick up, if giving stays at the level that it is right now, and we stay with the budget that we're going to propose to you for 2022, at the end of the year, we will still have a rainy day fund of about $130,000 to $140,000. Now, should we be complacent? Well, build bigger barns. We're going to sit back and take our ease because we got a rainy day fund. Well, of course not. On the other hand, should we be panicked? No. Should we be praying? Yeah, we should be praying. So it is a matter of concern. It is a matter for prayer. But it bothers me to think, and I hope that it's being resolved, it bothers me to think that any of you is panicked and wondering if things are going to fall apart here. The Lord is faithful. It is ultimately up to Him. And if we are careful and do what is wise and judicious, we should be just fine. I'm going to refer to my notes because otherwise someone is going to come up and get the shepherd's crook and yank me out of here, about which some of you I know will be happy. All right, now if you will turn and look at page 6. And by the way, these budgets, the missionary budget that's proposed, the financial statements, which we've now looked at for 2021, and also the proposed budget we're now going to look at for 2022, our chairman will be asking us to move and to approve these things, so keep that in your mind as we move forward. But look at page 6, and you'll see that that is in a report in a different format of 2021, and also a proposed budget for 2022. So the first 3 columns are 2021. And if you look down at the bottom of column 3, you will see that our budget for 2021 was $641,000. All right, some of you probably remember that. That was very close, within just a few dollars of our previous year's budget. So that was the budget for last year. Column 1 at the bottom, you see we actually spent $601,000. This is our general fund. So the middle column shows the difference. We actually spent $40,000 less than our budget. Hooray! Praise the Lord, we were able to do that. The far right column then is our proposed budget for 2022. And I don't think that it is worth taking the time now, nor do we have the time to go line by line by line. I think you can look at those things, and I am going to hover around here a little bit after the meeting. If you have questions, come and ask me. I may look at you with a glazed look in my eyes because I may have to go find the answer. I may not have it off the top of my head. But be happy to find information if you want. But line by line, that is the budget for 2022. And if you look at the bottom, look at the number, $456,000. That is a decrease in our budget from last year of 29%. Would we like the budget to be lower? Yes, but there's some things we're convinced that the Lord wants us to do. And so we can't just slash all of those things. So we've been as careful and as wise as we can be. There was a finance committee that met, and then the board looked this over, and we're being as careful as we can be, and we think this is a wise way to go. Again, if we spend this budget and if giving does not increase, we will be using our reserves. And if that's what the Lord has in mind for us, that's what we will do. Giving may increase, and we may find some ways to decrease some of these expenses, but that is the proposed budget, $456,000. So again, I say we should not be complacent, nor should we be alarmed, but we should be praying as we move forward. Now, at the risk of having you ask questions that I cannot answer, I'll just ask, are there any questions right now that you want to ask? Yes? The missions, thank you. The missions endowment is in some ways separate from everything, and I'll try and explain briefly, Rayanne. We received a very generous gift, just under $510,000, and the donor wants those monies to be held in an endowment, which means they are to be treated as income generating, and that we may use the income for missions, but preserve what's called the corpus, the $510,000. So those monies are invested with Morgan Stanley, a Christian management firm back in Grand Rapids, Michigan, is hovering over that for us and watching that for us. When Janelle reported to you that roughly $75,000 were available, what has happened is that during the year, as of December 31st, during the year, that $510,000 earned about $75,000. Now, here's the problem. Should we take it all out? Well, if you take it all, we don't need it today. And if we take it out, it's not earning any money. So let's leave it in until we need it. What happens if the market falls apart and it all goes away? So it's just like a faith promise commitment. It's just like the endowment is saying, here's the money that's available. And as of December 31st, $75,000 in round numbers is what's available. And so we're trusting by faith that that money will be available when and if we need it for our mission support during the year. Does that make sense? Okay. Yes. When other groups use our building, typically they make a donation of some kind, and I don't think there are any exceptions. That would go into the building fund. Does that answer that? Okay. Yes, Roger.
Where did your rainy day fund come? How did it go? And is it
The rainy day fund that we currently have is the rainy day fund that we currently have. Where did it come from? It is carryover from year to year, so that we had carryover the previous year, we had carryover the previous year. It is now shrinking because we are using it up, but it's just carryover from excess giving from previous years.
So there's no replenishment for it?
There's replenishment for it if you and I give in excess of what we spend. Yeah. Yeah, Roger. Roger spotted something that I should have mentioned, and that's legal and accounting. We trust the people who work with finances in our church, all right? We wouldn't have someone working with finances we didn't trust. But we also have rules, and you trust but you verify. And so the rules for a nonprofit are very strict. And one of the things that has been set up in our Constitution and bylaws is that on a regular basis, we need to have an independent third party come in and look over our financial stuff and say, hey, is it like it's supposed to be? And so the question is, why is legal and accounting have an increase? And the reason is that we, every 5 years, are supposed to have a review. I'm going to use the term audit, and if you're an accountant, you know very well that's not what we're doing, but that's the term you and I as lay people think of as an audit. A review is a low-level audit, and what they will do is come in and they will assess, they will interview us, and they will find out how are we keeping the records, and do we have dual signatures required on the checks, and do we have dual custody of the offerings, and make sure that we're doing things honestly and above board, and then they'll give us a report. And sometimes that report says, hey, here's an area where you need to make some changes and corrections and so forth. We estimate that's going to cost about $5,000. And would we prefer not to do it? We'd prefer not to do that. But it's something our Constitution and bylaws calls for. It's an honest thing to do, and so we've put that in the budget, and we're going to try and do that this year. Yeah, Kathy. Community outreach is one of those things that you see a fairly significant amount of money in that category, and you wonder, what is that? Are we going to provide balloons for the neighborhood? What are we doing? No. But what we are concerned about is that we, over the last few years, have agreed among ourselves that we do not do a good job about reaching into our local community. All right? So we need some help in those areas. And so we are committing to spend some funds to do some things, and I don't know how much I can say. It's not my story to tell, but there are some things coming. I think some of you remember the organization called Communio and that ministry, and we're going to be working with them more in spending money in ways that we can reach out into our community, get our community in here, get some interaction and engagement with our community so we can share the love of Christ in various ways. That's not much of an answer, but that's about as specific as I know how to be. I don't know if that answers that or not. Yeah. Okay, Robert.
Hi, we had talked last year, and I was
Okay. I'm going to come shy of giving a full update because I have a feeling someone else is going to do that. But I will say that the question has to do with the proposal that we have floated about revising our youth space, the physical youth space in the building. And I think the short answer is yes. There are things happening that is still afoot. That becomes an entirely separate thing from our budget, however. That'll be a capital project above and beyond our budget, and something that we all need to be praying about, frankly, because it's something that we need to do. We are, if you look at other churches and other ministries, we're behind the times, and so that's something we want to do and need to do, and I'm just leaking steam at all fittings to tell you more, but someone else is going to do that, so. Anything else? Yeah.
I know that my cost of living has gone up. I noticed the staff salaries and benefits have gone down here.
Staff, yeah.
Concerning, I don't know that it's needed.
Aaron's bringing up an interesting question. All of you experience cost of living increases, and so the fact that the total number for staff salaries and benefits has gone down looks on the surface like it may be concerning. We have a different staff level now. Remember, in the olden days, we had 4, we have 3 now. 3 pastors and staff. So staff levels are down. The current staff did receive some increases. We would always like to do more, but we want to see to it that God's people are taken care of. And so I appreciate your concern, but our staff is taken care of. We all wish we could have more, but they are being taken care of. There was another question? Yes. Well, Rayanne is asking if there's any organization to the idea of pastoral sabbaticals. And I'll give you a non-answer, yes and no. There is not, but there will be. I think the reason that number is in there, Rayanne, is to make a commitment. We need a pastoral sabbatical policy, and we need to enforce it. And no, it will not be a matter of, oh, I think I need a sabbatical at all. It'll be a matter of, here's the schedule, and here's your sabbatical, and you will go. Yeah. Janelle. There is no plan. The question is whether there's any plan to change staffing levels. There is no plan at this time to change staffing levels. All right, I'm going to escape while I can. I will be hovering around after if you have other questions. Thank you.
All right, gang, the light's at the end of the tunnel. You're almost there, so bear with me if you would. So when I was putting together my comments for this morning, I started looking at the year of 2021, and I really didn't want to put together a really bad Christmas letter that it's like, this kid went off to camp and did this. I didn't want that to happen, but I also didn't want to go without remembering some of the things that happened in 2021. So I have a list here that I'm going to go through and use those as kind of jumping off points for discussion. Back in 2021, some of our favorite groups returned to our building, which was fantastic to see. We had the men's BSF group returning, and then we had the Friday homeschool co-op coming back, which is great to see more people in our building on a regular basis. Scott mentioned that we actually got to send our folks out on a mission trip to Paraguay, so that happened last year. And Pastor Mitch arrived. I went through the whole list, and so when we hire a pastor, sometimes that doesn't make it to the normal agenda, and that's where I got these things. I was like, well, I better not forget that Pastor Mitch showed up last year. So I got that in there. Yep. But we also lost Pastor Matt, which was unfortunate. And so going back to the staffing question that we had, are we looking to increase? Right now, our budget just doesn't have room to have a 4th pastor on staff. So what that does mean is that we have pastors that have full-time jobs that are doing additional jobs. So Pastor Paul is still in charge of children's ministries, and that's not a long-term solution to have Pastor Paul be that person. We were super hopeful that when Dana Kingsley retired 3 years ago, that someone else would step in and kind of take that. It's essentially a part-time job managing our children's program. It's about 10 hours a week, and we were just hopeful that through announcements and talking to different people that someone would step into that role, maybe a recently retired teacher. I was praying for someone like that really wanted to administrate the children's program. And it just didn't happen, and there's a whole bunch of things around volunteerism and the way volunteerism is these days that people don't commit to things like they used to, and whether that's true or not, it's just not been the case, and we don't have that person yet. So if you're thinking, hey, I think I just retired from being a teacher and I'd love to do that, we would like you to come talk to us, because we definitely need someone to administrate that program. It is about 10 hours a week, so it is a lofty commitment. But so we are still looking for that, because we do need to alleviate these things that were a full-time job and take some of them off of our current pastors. The name change, I'm sure that you guys are going to ask that question if I don't talk about it, and you may ask that question anyway. We decided just to table that discussion. All of the things that happened during COVID and the fact that it was kind of a up for discussion issue anyway. Some people loved it, some people hated it. COVID times were not the right time to make additional changes for the sake of making additional changes. So that's why that's been tabled. Just adding change for change's sake, or adding change even if it's a really good idea, but can be done later. Maybe now's not the right time for that. So that's been tabled. It'll be up for discussion down the road, but we all thought that in 2021, COVID would be well behind us, but here we are, 2022, and 2 of our pastors are gone this morning. So we're still living in the middle of it, right? Hard conversations continued. It was on the agenda for the first 4, 5, 6 months of 2021, was talking about race issues, talking about political issues. How do we engage those types of ideas in the church in a positive way, in a way that's loving, in a way that shows grace, in a way that we can communicate effectively? But those conversations are still happening. We had a Sunday school class about it, or grow our class, sorry. I'm probably going to call it Sunday school forever. One of the things I wrote down, because it did make it to the agenda and I thought it was great, was we started having coffee and cookies again. And I'm a big fan of coffee and cookies, so I thought that was great. And we received the first issue of the Berean Upbeat last year, so thank you, Roger and Kathy. And someone asked the question about the gym remodel, so we started this big idea of what it would look like to remodel, not the gym specifically, but the rooms attached to that building. And this big idea of how we can get people from the community excited about the things that are happening inside the doors, and thinking about that portion of the building that faces the upward fields and being the face to the community, that as they are moving through our facilities, you know, we have hundreds of people here on Saturdays in the fall. How can we get those folks to hang out for a few minutes, come in again, and come in here on Sunday morning? So it's about being one step along the journey of getting them in here so we can share the love of Christ with them. Obviously, we can share the love of Christ with them everywhere. But we had a very small and a very quiet men's retreat that was very successful. Just a handful of us going out and not eating and being quiet in the woods, and it was absolutely delightful. I'm probably a weirdo for saying that, but I absolutely loved it. Pastor Paul took a sabbatical, and to kind of go further into that portion. So like Scott said, we definitely need an organized structure around sabbatical. I kind of had to push Paul to take the sabbatical that he went on, because there's never a good time for a senior pastor to be gone for 7 weeks. There just isn't. And so we had to establish a time for him to be gone and assume that everything would just be taken care of, which it was. In his absence, everything was taken care of, and he was able to go away and get some time to refresh, which was great. Upward was back. That was fantastic. I think we need a bigger round of applause. And we had a couple of outreach events attached to that as well, which was fun. We had the beginning of our small pod ministries, and we had our first second Sunday meetings last year, which was great. And thank you, Roger. And we had lots of vandalism last year. It was weird. We had spray paint, and we had the yards torn up, and we had, on Halloween, someone lit our outhouses on fire and burned down the neighbor's yard and their shed and their RVs. So not great things happen too, which is why Sam was talking about security, because bad things happen on our property. We have a lot of property and not a lot of video cameras, but that happened. And I didn't want to end on that note. So we had a wedding in here in December. It was the first wedding inside the building in a long time, so I just wanted to acknowledge that. You know what's funny? I was thinking in the sanctuary. I didn't even think about it because you guys said this. We're gonna do it in the field before. Was in the sanctuary? Okay. There were 2 weddings last year. So you guys are gonna get a little insight into Tim Jennings just for a moment. That's why I don't like to talk in front of people. I always forget something and someone very important, so I apologize. Thank you. He yelled grace for those of you watching online. So, now looking forward to 2022. Dan Miller said something the other day. Tim's always smiling. What's wrong with Tim? He's always smiling. Unless you put a microphone in front of his face, and then he starts crying. So here I go. So, for 2022, goals of mine. I want us to seek and follow God's will as elders in our personal lives first, and as elders of the church second. And to choose God's wisdom over my own every single time in my personal life first, and as an elder second. If we can do that, we'll be in the right spot. And that's the first and most important thing. So with that said, the rest of it gets easier. I want to communicate more effectively with you guys. I want to have concise, clear, and continuing conversations and communication that is effective and makes sense and is in the right mediums and is on Facebook and is on Twitter. I'm still not on Twitter. And is on TikTok, of all the places. We need to communicate with the fellowship in a way that is meaningful and effective to the fellowship. I think that's super important. We need to clearly define and communicate the roles of women in the church in leadership positions so that women are empowered and encouraged to lead. We need to establish a plan for children's ministries, as I was saying before. Our kids' programs are too important to let them be what gets picked up at the end of the day. They need to be a priority. This one's going to be hard. So I want to see a transition on the board of elders. I would say that from when I joined the board, we were more of a board of directors and not a group of shepherds. I want to see us become a group of shepherds that's leading our flock and leading effectively and engaging in your lives in a way that helps you draw closer to Jesus. I want to see more volunteers. I joke about that because my wife and I do children's church, and we've been doing children's church for the past year or so solo. There's no one else doing children's church but us. There have been announcements, there have been things in the bulletin, but honestly, folks, we need people to step up and volunteer a Sunday a month here and there just to help out with that. It's important. And the last one on my list for the things to do better, as if the first one wasn't enough. I want us to plan more effectively, and this was in the note cards you guys filled out at Second Sunday a couple weeks ago. I want us to plan more effectively so that we know what's happening in 6 months, so that y'all know what's happening in 6 months, so that we can plan and organize and communicate effectively. So those are my notes. I apologize for all the teariness on the second half. And I'll open it up for questions, and before I take the first question, I just want to apologize for being up here on the platform. I know it seems a little weird. We're usually down there standing, and I think it's a little more personal, but because of the online stuff, they just stuck us up here so that it would be way easier to deal with cameras and sound. So I just want you guys to know that I'd rather be, well, sitting down looking this direction first. But standing down up front would be much, much better, because I think that up here behind the podium isn't the best way to take this kind of conversation. But here we are, and that's what we're doing, so I'll open up to questions on anything that you heard. I know that sometimes the financial report, you're kind of looking at it in the moment. You don't have your questions ready. So you have questions for anybody that presented. Sorry, y'all, putting you back on the spot. But questions, Chrissy? Yeah, so I'll try and repeat that in a way that captures everything. Are you looking to evaluate the current roles and responsibilities of the pastors and then maybe reassign roles based on what's currently needed? And the answer to that is yes. It's something that I've been waiting to do until after we got through the budget process. So my plan, this is going to be news to the pastors, I'm sure they're watching online, is to sit down with all of them and just whiteboard what they're currently doing, see what the gaps are, what the holes are, and then move forward that way. Does that answer that? Chrissy, put your hand back up.
Then a follow-up is congregational care going to be a part of that?
Yeah. So congregational care, what you guys might know as pastoral care, that's when I talk about us elders being better shepherds and not being a board of directors. I think you'll probably see some changes in that front, mostly from the elders and less from the pastors, I'd say, because as under shepherds, I think that we as elders, that's our primary role. Just got done finishing a book with the board talking about that and kind of what the roles and responsibilities and how do you divvy that up, because the pastors are elders, but they also have designated responsibilities, especially the teaching pastor. So do we give them a few less people to be responsible for? So yes, the pastors will be doing some of that, but I think most of that is probably going to fall on the elders. I saw this one first. Yeah, sure.
To kind of follow up with that too, what I would encourage all of you as our family and our congregation, I have been super pleased coming here to Berean. Amber and me have I was just telling somebody this morning, we have a list of people that we need to get together with. And that list doesn't seem to shrink, but seems to grow. And you have been all awesome because as far as me, like I could easily do that. This is my job, but you have been awesome because you want to hang out with me and Amber, my wife. That's a little bit harder with her regular work schedule. But what I would say in that is that is something that I believe that every single one of our pastors wants to do, is spend time with all of you. What I would encourage all of you to do is we will try our best to be constantly coming to you and wanting to hang out with you, but also come and invite us over. Invite us to your house for dinner. Be gracious with us if, like me and Amber, we have a long list of people, and it's not that we don't want to hang out with you right away, but it might have to be like in 2 months or something like that. But please, like, invite us into your homes. We would love to do that. And as Tim said, elders with that as well. So thanks.
Kathy. Sorry, Kathy had her hand up first. I apologize. When we have the conversation about the pastoral responsibilities, will it be communicated to the congregation? Yes, and hopefully well. Yes. I like it. So, okay, I'm going to try and recapture question 1 and then answer it and recapture question 2, so bear with me. Question 1 was, why don't we see more young parents volunteering in children's ministries? And I have my theories. My theory, personally, is that a lot of times those young parents want a break. They want to be able to sit in here, hear a sermon, and not have to worry about their kiddos, which I totally get that. Can we get some of those same folks who want a break to volunteer once a month? Probably. And it's just a matter of asking them and pleading with them to do so. And then I guess that the follow-up to that is if someone asks you, say yes. So, easy as that. And then the second question was, why don't we have a lit up sign or a lighted sign? The answer is that was discussed a number of years ago, and I'm not sure where that conversation stopped. Do you remember, Scott? Yeah, so that's kind of was my first thought. We're kind of tucked away, so people would see it once they got on Boone between Bowdish and University. So if you can get people on Boone between Bowdish and University, they're probably not going to miss the church anyway. But having a sign with information on it isn't a bad idea. It's just something that... Well, we'd have to get property rights and all that stuff. We'd have to go through a whole... Yeah. That's all right. I'm going to go Roger, then Kathy. Yeah, so I'll take personal responsibility for that one. I looked at those last night. That was the first time I looked at them. So here we go, left for Hawaii the Monday after that meeting, and then I got back and headed to Phoenix for work. So I have not been home really in the past 2 weeks to look at those, but I looked at them last night, and there are a lot of good questions in there that need answered, and I will be typing them up and be presenting them to the board at the next meeting. So, Kathy. Right. So, yeah. So Kathy's question is, why are what you might call the front doors? I mean, these are what we consider the main entrance, right? But if you were to Google our address and follow it to 10910 East Boone, you'd end up there. And those are the doors that obviously are the front doors to the church. Why aren't those doors open? And I think that's probably worth revisiting. And I don't. Yeah. Yeah. Will they ever be open again? And I know that the security team has talked about that. And those doors, they're right next to where the kids are, sitting right next to the nursery, so it's a question of security, but you're right, it's not super welcoming, so maybe we can establish a process where they're open until a certain time during the service when there's fewer people milling about. So it's a good question. Any other questions? It's 11:24. Okay, so we have about 5 minutes remaining. We do have to do the presentation of officers and then closing prayer and motions and confirmation. So at this time, we have our elders in the room. I will invite them down. I'll call your name. Please come down when I call your name because I'm going to do it in a specific order. Super thankful to work with all these guys. So we're going to start with Jay Bailey, who is our current secretary, and he is our elder who is currently up for reappointment. He has graciously accepted the call for another 3-year term, which if the person who wrote that question is in this room, yes, our elders have terms. They're 3-year terms, at which point they get to reevaluate whether they want to continue serving, and we get to evaluate whether we want them to continue serving, and we're super excited that Jay's still willing to serve. And he serves as our secretary. Jay also serves on the worship ministry and teaches Sunday school. Grow hour, sorry. Next one, Sam Fletcher. Sam, if you'd come up. So Sam serves as an elder. He also serves on the FMT team. Obviously, he was up here with his report earlier. So imagine your house with its single kitchen and its maybe 1 to 4 bathrooms, and imagine doing maintenance on 10 times that. That's what Sam gets to do, because he has 2 kitchens, I don't know how many bathrooms, all the heating and air conditioning, all that stuff, and Sam does a great job of all that. Next up is Scott Mcdonald, who's our current treasurer. He also teaches during the Grow Hour, and he also manages the Sunday afternoon gathering. And Scott, thank you. And then Jeff, who's our illustrious Upward leader, also teaches in the Grow Hour, 3rd through 6th grade, and then myself serving as your chairman. One of the questions that were written down was, are we going to get new elders to make up for the ones that we lost. Yes, we're in the process of searching for those. I've asked a couple of people, and it's just people that have been asked in the past and just are not choosing to do that right now, and that's totally cool. So we're in the process of looking. With our current attendance, we actually have the right number of elders based on what the bylaws say. We may even still be slightly heavy on elders, but those are a recommendation, not a requirement, so we are looking at other folks. So I just want to say thank you to these guys. They're doing a great job. So let's give them a round of applause. Thank you. You guys can take a seat. So with that said, I have to say a whole bunch of words, and you guys are going to listen very carefully because then you're going to vote. So here come the words. Are you guys ready? Okay. I didn't feel like you were super ready, so I'm going to ask one more time if you're ready, because there really are a lot of words. Okay. I see even a couple thumbs up. Okay. So I am going to entertain a motion to do the following. To approve the minutes of the 2021 annual fellowship meeting as presented. To approve the missions budget for 2022 as presented. To approve the financial statements for year-end 2021 as presented. To approve the general fund budget for 2022 as presented. And to confirm the appointment of the 2024 elder term for Jade Bailey, and to just a sounding approval of the elders in general. So I will entertain a motion of all those things. Glenn Wagaman with the move, a second. Dan Miller, the second. And we'll have a voice vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? So carried. Thank you. And that adjourns this meeting, and I'll hang out for a few minutes if you have other questions. Thank you very much.